Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
If you're joining us today, you probably know the drill by now.
Right. You hand us the materials and we dig in.
Exactly. You hand us a stack of materials, articles, videos, research, whatever it is, and we go through it line by line.
To pull out the underlying threads, right?
Yeah, the context.
Yeah.
Bigger picture. And today we are looking at something that on its surface seems, incredibly trivial.
Super trivial at first glance.
Right. We're talking about a casting announcement for a television show. Just a few lines of PR text on social media.
Literally just a tweet.
Yeah, but the reaction to this specific announcement is fast because it instantly triggers this massive, highly complex debate.
Oh, it totally spirals.
It spirals into modern pop culture, political ideology, and believe it or not, the foundational definitions of justice and morality.
It really is a perfect case study of how the modern internet digests information. I mean, we aren't just looking at it.
No, not at all.
We are looking at the actual architecture of online fandoms. We're examining how cultural commentaries
and how a fantasy spinoff can become a proxy battleground.
Exactly. A proxy for some of the heaviest cultural and spiritual divides we have going on right now.
So let's lay out the sources. The specific materials we're working from today are excerpts from a YouTube video transcript from a channel called The Trent Report.
Along with a companion article, right?
Right. A companion article published on a site called Fandom Pulse, written by John F. Trent.
And both of these pieces are reacting to a single event.
Yeah. A pop culture commentator named Grace Randolph gave her take on a casting update for the upcoming Game of Thrones spinoff, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
Which just blew the lid off the whole thing.
It really did.
Yeah.
But hey, just a very quick heads up for you listening before we get too deep here. We are dealing with some highly charged political and even theological commentary today.
Yeah, they do not pull punches.
The authors of these pieces pull no punches at all, and they are bringing in very strong viewpoints from both sides of the political aisle.
It gets intense.
It does. And I need to explicitly state that we're not here to take a side, and we certainly aren't here to tell you who is right or wrong in this broader culture war.
We are strictly neutral observers today.
100%. Our job is simply to map out the arguments exactly as they appear in the text you provided.
We want to show you how these commentators construct their arguments,
so you can understand the actual mechanics of the debate.
That's the mission today. We're operating purely as an analytical lens. We're going to look at the rhetoric, the structure of the complaints, and those specific cultural friction points.
Leaving our own baggage at the door.
Exactly. Leaving our baggage at the door so we can focus entirely on the text.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's get right into the catalyst, because the whole thing starts with
a single PR.
Yeah. The official Game of Thrones account on X posted a brief update about Season 2 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. It's standard, bland corporate PR.
The text just says, every journey needs new companion.
Right. Every journey needs new companion. And then it lists 3 actors. Lucy Boynton as Lady Rohan.
Peter Mullen as Sir Eustace Osgrey.
And Babu Cisse as Sir Venice. That's it. That is the match that lights this entire powder keg.
Which is kind of incredible when you think about it.
It really is.
It's a corporate announcement, completely devoid of any editorializing.
Just a cast list.
Right, just headshots and names. But in today's media environment, a casting announcement doesn't exist in a vacuum. It gets fed into this massive interpretation machine.
Oh, absolutely. Fans, critics, YouTubers, they instantly start decoding it.
And that decoding process is where the friction starts.
Which brings us to Grace Randolph. The materials provided focus really heavily on her reaction to this tweet.
They highlight 2 of her posts.
Yeah, the first one is pretty standard fare. She writes, Babu from Alien Earth. Seems like great casting across the board here for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Season 2.
Which is totally harmless.
Yeah. She recognizes an actor from another project, says she's excited, but her follow-up post is what really gets the gears turning for the authors we're analyzing.
This is where it kicks off.
She writes, BTW, just saying that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a progressive show, and this casting proves that.
There's that word.
Right. She goes on, his ice, wonder if he'll keep its super conservative fan. Babu is a great actor. I'm excited for him to get this role.
What's fascinating here is that the word progressive is the absolute focal point of this entire controversy.
It triggers the whole response.
Both the video transcript and the Fandom Pulse piece latch onto it immediately, because Randolph leaves a massive gap in her logic.
She really does.
She drops the label, progressive claims this specific casting proves it, and then just moves on.
Yeah, she never actually explains why the show is progressive or how hiring Babu Cisse proves her point.
So what we see happening is the commentators having to fill in the blanks.
Right, but if she doesn't explain it, how do the commentators in our sources know what she means?
No.
Are they just assuming?
They essentially have to reverse engineer her. They base it entirely on the context of modern Hollywood debate.
Okay, so break that down.
They look at the casting and they look at the source. Babu Cisse is a black actor. The character he is cast to play Sir Benes was not depicted as black in the original books or the graphic novels.
Right.
Therefore, the commentators conclude that Randolph is applying the progressive label strictly because the show is indeed non-traditional or recast.
They assume she is celebrating the alteration of a traditionally white character into a diverse character as a political victory.
Exactly. That's the leap they make.
It's wild how fast that leap happens for you as the listener. Just think about that for a second. A social media manager posts a headshot, a pundit quote tweets it with a political label, and suddenly no one is talking about whether the actor is actually good for the role.
We aren't talking about his acting chops at all.
No, or his chemistry with the lead. The entire conversation is hijacked into a debate about Hollywood casting quotas and political alignment.
And that hijack requires the commentators to build a defense. To argue against Randolph's perceived celebration of progressive cast, the authors of our sources have to establish a baseline.
You have to go to the text.
Right. They have to prove that casting a black actor in this specific role is, in fact, a deviation from established lore. So they pivot from social media drama directly into a forensic examination of George R.R. Martin's text.
They really dig into the lore here. We're talking about the original novella, The Sworn Sword, which is part of the Tales of Dunk and Egg series.
Set roughly a century before the main Game of Thrones.
Right. And our sources want to be incredibly clear about who this character, Sir Benes, actually is visually. Trent points to the graphic novel adaptation of the book, noting that it clearly depicts Benes as a white.
He mentions the character has tan skin.
Yeah, but he specifically notes that's just because he's a knight who spends all day out in the...
But the video host doesn't stop at the visual art from the comic. He actually goes into a highly specific, almost clinical tangent about genetics.
Oh, the green eyes thing.
Yes. Based on George R.R. Martin's written description, Martin explicitly wrote that Sir Benes has green eyes. And the host of the video uses this detail to launch into a demographic breakdown of global eye color.
Yeah, this part of the transcript is fascinatingly granular. I mean, he says, and I quote, "If you're unfamiliar with people with green eyes, it's like 2% of the entire world. And it's usually people from Central and Western Europe. Typically, you see it among people with Scottish and Irish ancestry."
It's a very specific real-world statistic to bring up.
It is. He goes on to argue that you don't typically see green eyes in black populations, stating they usually have brown eyes.
Yeah.
He directly links this to melanin.
Right. And you might wonder why someone is applying real-world demographic statistics to a fantasy universe that literally has dragons and ice zombies.
That was exactly my thought. Isn't it a bit absurd to demand genetic realism in Westeros? I mean, magic exists there.
On one hand, yes. But on the other hand, you have to remember how George R.R. Martin writes his books. In the Game of Thrones universe, physical traits and genetics are actually massive plot.
Oh, like the hair colors in the first...
Exactly. Think about the first book. Ned Stark figures out the entire Lannister conspiracy simply by looking at a genealogy book.
Right. The seed is strong.
Yes. He realizes that the Baratheon black hair is a dominant trait, meaning the blonde Prince Joffrey can't be the king's legitimate son.
Or look at the Targaryen.
Right. Their silver hair and purple eyes are distinct in-universe markers of their Valyrian blood. So the fandom has been trained by the author himself to treat physical descriptions not just as flavor text, but as rigid pseudoscientific lore.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
The fandom is applying the author's unforensic logic back onto the adaptation.
Exactly.
And Tret really wants the audience to feel the texture of this character, to prove how specific Martin's vision. The physical description of Sir Benes they pull from the text is honestly kind of brutal.
It really is not flattering at all.
No. Let me read how Martin describes his clothes first. He wears brown breeches, a shapeless rough-spun tunic horseside boots. When armored, he donned a loose brown surcoat over a shirt of rusted mail.
So everything is brown, rough, and literally rusting away.
Yeah, it immediately strips away any romanticized notion of knighthood. He isn't walking around in gleaming silver plate armor like Jaime Lannister.
He's utilitarian, degraded, and unkempt.
And that unappealing aesthetic extends to his actual body. The physical description is where it gets really harsh.
Oh yeah, the face.
Martin writes that Benes has a seamed face that looks like it's made out of the same boiled leather as his sword belt.
And then there's that one specific line.
Oh man, this line, which the Fandom Pulse article actually italicizes so you don't miss it. His head looks like one of those shriveled melons that we passed.
A shriveled
melon. And if that wasn't enough, even his teeth were brown under the red stain left by the sour leaf he liked to chew.
So just Picture this guy.
He's draped in dirty brown clothes and rusted metal. His face looks like an old boot. His head is a shriveled melon. And he's walking around with brown and red teeth from chewing the Westerosi equivalent of chewing tobacco.
Every single sensory detail there is designed to repulse. The texture of the leather face, the sight of the rust, the assumed smell of the sour leaf.
He is purposefully ugly.
And amidst all of that brown and dirt, the text delivers that specific detail the YouTube host was hung up on.
Right. The quote finishes, "Amidst all that brownness, his eyes stood out. They were a pale green, squinty small, close set, and shiny bright with malice."
Shiny brightness.
Yeah. And because of this overwhelming aesthetic, the character is literally called Sir Bennis of the Brown.
The YouTube transcript points this out too.
It does, saying he gets his name purely because he wears all this brown stuff and is just dirty.
So by laying out this incredibly detailed, highly unflattering description, the commentators are building a wall of textual evidence.
They're building a case.
Right. They are framing this casting not just as a casual change, but as a direct violation of the author's meticulous.
Yeah, the argument is that the text demands a very specific, visually distinct, and purposefully ugly aesthetic.
A white man with a leathery face, Scottish or Irish genetic markers, like green eyes and brown teeth.
So by casting Babu Cisse, an actor who doesn't fit that highly specific profile, the sources argue that the adaptation is prioritizing a contemporary ideological agenda over textual fidelity.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? Which brings us back to Grace Randolph calling the show progressive.
Right, because she threw the word out there, but she didn't define it.
So Trent decides he has to define it for her. He starts looking for other clues within the upcoming show to figure out what makes it so progressive.
He combs through whatever leaks or announcements he can find about season 1.
So he finds 3 specific examples that he thinks fit the bill.
And this is where the rhetoric takes a very sharp turn. He doesn't just call these elements progressive, he starts using the word degenerate.
That is a massive escalation in tone.
It really is.
He's actively framing these creative choices as a moral failing. Let's look at the 3 examples he pulls. First, he points out a sex swap of a minor character named Rafe. In the books, Rafe is a boy, but in the show, the character is being played by a young actress named Chloe Lee.
That's the first one.
Second, he mentions a scene where a child sings a body lewd song about a woman shoving her arm up a man's rear end.
Oh, yeah.
And third, he notes that the show will feature full frontal male nudity. He lists these 3 things and says, so maybe that is why she is describing it as progressive, because it is so degenerate. Who knows?
I want to pause on this conflation because it is crucial for understanding how this specific internet ecosystem operates.
Please do, because honestly, I was having a hard time understanding why a lewd song is in the exact same category as casting a female actress in a male role.
They seem totally disconnected.
Right, they seem like completely unrelated creative decisions.
In mainstream media criticism, they are unrelated. One is a casting choice, the other is a tone or maturity rating choice. But in the ideological framework this commentator is using, they are symptoms of the exact same underlying.
How so?
In this worldview, progressivism is viewed as a wholesale rejection of traditional Western Christian.
Okay.
So altering a character's traditional gender or race is seen as a rejection of established historical or textual boundaries. Similarly, featuring explicit nudity or children singing sexually graphic songs is seen as a rejection of traditional morality and modesty.
So to the author, they aren't separate.
Not at all. They are both degenerate because they both represent a tearing down of established traditional order.
That makes the use of the word degenerate make a lot more sense in context. He's not just saying it's gross, he's saying it's culturally corrosive.
Exactly.
But he doesn't stop at analyzing the show's content. He actually tries to psychoanalyze Randolph's view of the story's theme.
Right, the main character.
Yeah, he brings up the main character of this series, Dunk, who is a hedge knight traveling the country. The video host theorizes, I'm sure it probably has to do with the fact that maybe she sees Dunk as some kind of progressive hero because he is defending an injustice.
He's genuinely baffled by this idea.
He is. He says, I guess there's certain progressives that think defending any kind of injustice means that it's progressive, which is just utterly absurd and ridiculous.
He seems annoyed by the idea that political ideology would try to claim ownership over a universal concept like justice.
And this is the moment where the deep dive stops being about a Game of Thrones spin-off.
Oh, it goes way deeper.
It plunges headfirst into foundational political and theological philosophy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the commentator uses this disagreement over Dunk's heroism to outline 2 entirely incompatible ways of viewing the world.
Let's break those down, because the ideological clash here is heavy. The first framework he describes is what he considers the progressive framework.
Right.
According to the transcript, progressives have a twisted view of justice because they view the entire world exclusively through an oppressed versus oppressor narrative.
Let's define that for a second, because it gets thrown around a lot. What he's referring to is essentially a Marxist analytical framework. Think of it like this. Instead of looking at an individual action to determine if it is objectively right or wrong, this framework looks at the power dynamics between the people involved.
Who holds the institutional power and who is marginalized.
Exact. History and society are viewed as a constant class struggle between the commentator is arguing that progressives apply this lens to everything, including fantasy television, and that this narrative is how they twist and malign what true justice really is.
So if that is the broken progressive framework, what is the correct framework according to the source?
He counters it with a perspective deeply rooted in theology.
Yeah, he argues that true justice has nothing to do with power dynamics.
Yeah.
It is entirely about objective morality.
He asks, did you do something that was immoral?
Right. Did you violate God's law? Did you violate the divine law?
This is a profound leap. We've gone from arguing about the eye color of a fictional knight to debating the existence of divine law.
It's intense.
The commentator is claiming that the progressive ideology isn't just a different political opinion. It is an active, intentional attempt to deny God's existence and erase divine law, replacing it entirely with this secular oppressor-oppressed matrix.
It is a staggering escalation. And again, as an impartial reminder for the listener, we're just mapping the territory here.
You aren't endorsing any of this.
Right. We aren't endorsing the idea that progressives are trying to erase God, nor are we endorsing the idea that traditionalists are blinded by dogma.
We're just looking at how the text frames the debate.
But you have to marvel at how quickly this escalated. A tweet announced an actor was playing a guy with a shriveled melon head. A pundit called it progressive. And suddenly the response is a debate about whether modern society is abandoning the concept of objective divine morality in favor of Marxist power dynamics.
For these commentators, the stakes of pop culture are quite literally the moral fabric of reality.
The text of the show is merely the battleground.
The actual war being fought is spiritual and ideological. And this brings us to one of the most intellectually tangled parts, the paradox of casting a villain.
Oh, right. Because despite this massive foundational philosophical divide, there is actually a brief moment where the YouTube host agrees with Grace Randolph.
Which is a surprise twist.
It is. He says, I would agree with her that that is a progressive move. That is a woke move to race swap a character, regardless of how the character is depicted.
So Randolph says casting a black actor as Bennis is progressive.
And the host, who clearly disguises progressive ideology, says, you know what, you're right. It is a woke move.
They both agree on what the action represents.
But that agreement creates a massive logical contradiction for the comment, which he spends a lot of time trying to untangle.
The contradiction lies in the nature of Sir Bennis himself.
Right. The host points out very emphatically that Bennis is not a good person. He reminds his audience of the physical description, the eyes shining bright with malice.
Calls him a
thief, and a dirty individual.
And this is where he tries to analyze standard tropes of progressive media, or at least how he pursues them.
Because the common argument in these circles is that when Hollywood casts diverse actors, they elevate them.
Right, they make them heroic, flawless, or morally superior.
So he is asking, why would a progressive showrunner take a progressive step to cast a black actor, only to make him the repulsive, malicious, sour leaf-chewing thief of the story?
It completely breaks the perceived rules of the woke.
It creates a cognitive short circuit in his argument. He recognizes the action of race swapping as belonging to an ideology he opposes, but he cannot reconcile the application of that action with his understanding of how that ideology operates.
He theorizes that maybe the show is going to subvert expectations.
Yeah, maybe they are going to change the source material and make Bennis a misunderstood good guy, an oppressed victim of the system.
But then he immediately shuts his own theory.
He does, saying, unless you are going to do some kind of subversion, which he actually does not do with this guy's not a good person.
He's basically saying they are doing the woke thing, but they are doing it wrong according to their own woke rule.
And that confusion, that inability to make the progressive label fit the reality of the character, seems to fuel the intensity of his conclusion. Let's look at the sign-off of this YouTube video.
It is absolute rhetorical whiplash.
It really is. He concludes his analysis by definitively stating that the progressive ideology is failing because, quote, their ideology is wicked and evil.
Those are absolute unyielding terms.
Wicked and evil. He asks his viewers to leave a comment. And then, without missing a beat, he says, remember, to always be charitable, especially to each other, and to always speak the truth. Why would you be afraid of the people? Why are you not afraid of God instead of man?
For you listening, I want you to really think about the cognitive dissonance happening in those final few seconds.
It's jarring.
Within a single breath, The host explicitly brands a political ideology as wicked, and that is a categorization that inherently humanizes and demonizes anyone who holds those beliefs.
You cannot compromise with wicked.
Exactly, you can only destroy it. But then he immediately pivots to a pastoral, almost gentle plea to always be charitable, especially to each other.
How do you practice charity while simultaneously declaring the other side's worldview to be fundamentally evil?
In the context of online culture wars, this dual language is very common. The demonization is directed outward at the progressives and the Hollywood elites.
And the charity is directed inward.
Right toward the viewers who agree with. Furthermore, his final appeal to fear God instead of man cements the idea we discussed earlier.
That media criticism is indistinguishable from spiritual warfare.
Exact. Standing up against diverse casting in a fantasy show is framed as an act of religious courage.
That is a heavy, heavy note to end a video on. But I want to pivot now because we need to look at the environment where this video lives.
The fandom pulse ecosystem.
Here's where it gets really interesting. An article on the internet doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is surrounded by a specific ecosystem, comments, sidebars, advertisements that tell us exactly who the target audience is and what they value.
And the materials you provided included some of this peripheral data,
which is an absolute goldmine for understanding this subculture.
Let's start with the comment section. The comments on an article are the immediate feedback. They show you the temperature of the room.
The first comment highlighted in the source is from a user named Laren Mithras. They are complaining about the blindness of the public.
They write that the public continues to look forward to new shows when every show in the past has been a disappointing plate of soap.
And they go on to complain about big, bland corporate purveyors of bland profits and social agenda.
That comment perfectly encapsulates the prevailing mood. Notice that the commenter isn't even talking about Game of Thrones or Sir Bennis anymore.
Right. The critique has broadened into profound exhaustion and cynicism directed at the entirety of mainstream corporate entertainment.
The phrase social agenda is used as a catch-all term. In this space, any creative decision that the commenter feels prioritizes progressive signaling over traditional storytelling is lumped into social.
There is a deep-seated belief here that corporations have abandoned quality art and entertainment value in order to preach a message.
And while that first comment is cynical, the temperature drops almost immediately into direct hostility.
Yeah, the second comment provided is from a user named Demzer Trash.
First of all, the username tells you exactly where they align politically.
There is zero ambiguity. And their comment isn't an analysis of the show. It's a direct personal attack on Grace Randolph, the pundit who started the conversation.
They write, this 72-year-old hag again.
No debate on the casting, no philosophical musings on divine law. Just a crude, ageist, and misogynistic insult.
It shows how incredibly volatile these online spaces are. You have the author of the piece talking about high-minded theological concepts, and right beneath it in the comments, someone is just throwing out misogynistic slurs.
It's the pipe from media critique to base hostility.
To truly understand this ecosystem, though, we have to look beyond the comments and examine the surrounding media diet that Fandom Pulse is curating.
Right. The article includes a top latest discussion sidebar.
This sidebar acts as a menu of the broader concerns and anxieties of this specific target audience.
The headlines provided in the source are incredibly rude. The first one mentions Roy Price, who is a former executive at Amazon and Disney.
The headline claims he affirms that Hollywood has contempt for the audience and a hostility toward white people and men.
So right there, the site is validating the audience's feeling of
It's telling them you aren't crazy for feeling alienated. The executives actually hate.
Then the second headline is about a science fiction novel called Orbital by Samantha Harvey. The headline says the book is getting review bombed on Goodreads, specifically over having a Russian character.
And the text mentions mainstream publishing's massive problems with identity politics.
For those who might not know, review bombing is a tactic where an organized group of people flood a review site like Goodreads or Rotten Tomatoes with one-star reviews.
They usually do this not because the book or movie is badly written, but because they are angry about a specific political or cultural element within.
In this case, the inclusion of a Russian character. It's a way to weaponize user scores to punish creators for perceived ideological offenses.
And the third headline in the sidebar is a listicle promoting 10 based science fiction books.
10 based science fiction books that should be in every reader's library. It explicitly states that this list is catering to people asking for recommendations of right-wing and Christian science fiction.
The term based is crucial here.
It's internet slang, right?
Yeah, it originated in hip-hop but was heavily co-opted by the political right. In this context, calling a book based means it unapologetically rejects progressive woke or politically correct.
It is a badge of honor. indicating that the art aligns with a specific traditionalist, political, and religious worldview.
These sidebars paint such a cohesive, undeniable picture. The audience reading this article feels entirely besieged by mainstream culture.
They're being fed a steady diet of narratives confirming their worst fears. Hollywood hates white men, the publishing industry is obsessed with identity politics, and progressive ideology is ruining art.
They feel like they have been pushed out of their own fandom.
Which leads us to the most fascinating part of the entire fandom pulse ecosystem, the capitalist solution.
Right, because when you have an audience that feels besieged, alienated, and hungry for content that reflects their value, you don't just have
You have a market opportunity.
Yes.
The source material you gave us includes a massive embedded advertisement for a book called A Throne of Bones, written by Vox.
I want to spend some time exploring this ad.
Let's do it because it is a brilliant example of counterculture marketing. The ad describes the book as the first installment in the Arts of Dark and Light series.
It is set in the ascendant human empire of Amor.
The text explicitly notes that Amor is modeled on a fantasy Roman republic infused with a 4-century-old faith.
The plot involves rival noble houses, provincial rebellions, and otherworldly threats from goblins and orcs.
The pitch promises intricate political intrigue, brutal battlefield tactics, and profound moral questions.
The language used in this advertisement is meticulously chosen to appeal to the exact grievances we just saw in the comments.
Look at the closing pitch of the ad. It says, if you're craving a smarter, more disciplined alternative to conventional epic fantasy, this massive, unapologetic tome will seize your imagination.
Look at those specific words. Smarter.
Yeah.
Alternative. Unapologetic.
Why would an ad call its fantasy book smarter? It's implying that mainstream fantasy, like the new Game of Thrones spin-off, has been dumbed down by its focus on diversity and social agendas.
The ad is positioning A Throne of Bones not just as a fun, but as an antidote to the bland corporate purveyors that come about.
Exact. It promises a world with unflinching military realism, a strong emphasis on a 4-century-old faith and characters who wrestle with faith, loyalty, and power without pulling punches.
It is sending a massive flashing signal.
It is saying, are you tired of Game of Thrones race-swapping characters? Are you tired of progressive ideologies invading your escapism? Come over here. We have a fantasy Roman Republic with traditional faith, authentic warfare, and zero progressive social agenda.
It is a parallel economy. This is a crucial synthesis of our entire deep dive.
The authors of these articles and videos aren't just shouting into the void about mainstream media. They are actively building, promoting, and monetizing an alternative entertainment ecosystem.
They capture the alienation of an audience that feels attacked by Hollywood, and they offer them a bespoke, ideologically aligned product to buy instead.
The outrage over the casting of Sir Venice isn't just a cultural complaint. It serves as the top of the sales funnel for books like A Throne of Bones.
You get mad about the TV show, you click the article to validate your anger, and then you buy the book that promises to give you the fantasy experience you feel you've been denied.
It's a remarkably efficient ecosystem, and it underscores just how interconnected modern fandom politics and commerce really are. We have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let's trace the expansive journey we just went on.
It started so small.
It really did. We started with a simple 280-character tweet announcing that Babu Sise was cast as a supporting character Sir Venice in a Game of Thrones spin-off.
We watched a pundit label that casting progressive without explaining why.
We then plunged into the granular pseudogenetic details of green eyes, rusted mail, and shriveled melon heads to understand the rigid baseline of the source material.
From there, we expanded outward, tracing how that single casting choice was used to ignite massive philosophical debate.
Debates about the existence of objective divine law versus a Marxist oppressor or oppressed narrative.
We examine the paradox of casting a diverse actor as a vile villain.
And the jarring cognitive dissonance of a commentator preaching Christian charity while simultaneously labeling his opponents as wicked.
And finally, we explored the fandom pulse ecosystem itself.
Discovering how this cultural friction isn't just ideological, it's being used to build and monetize alternative sci-fi and fantasy economy.
If there's a final synthesis to be drawn from all of this, it is that in today's highly fractured media landscape, the original text is often entirely secondary.
The show, the script, the author's words.
They don't matter as much. The casting announcements, the costumes, and the punditry surrounding them are essentially a blank canvas.
And upon that canvas, deeply entrenched cultural, political, and spiritual battles are fought.
A fantasy show ceases to be mere entertainment, becomes a
And that leads me to a final provocative thought that I want to leave you, the listener, with today.
Something to mull over.
Right, something for you to explore on your own that builds on everything we've unpacked. Think about how the absence of an author's or creator's explicit intent allows audiences and pundits to fill the void with their own deeply held philosophical frameworks.
Grace Randolph didn't explain why the show was progressive, so the internet spent hours explaining it for her using their own heavy bag.
So when a controversial casting choice is made, is the audience actually reacting to the actor?
Are they reacting to the character?
Or are they simply reacting to the heavy, complicated cultural and political baggage they themselves are bringing to the screen?
It's a fascinating question to consider the next time you see a fandom erupt online.
I want to warmly thank you for joining us on this custom-tailored deep dive today. We hope we delivered the thorough, multi-perspective analysis you were looking for. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we will catch you next time.